Show, bringing you artisan music and musicians, the vagabonds and adventurers building with the raw ingredients of folk music from both sides of the Atlantic. I am Chris the Bish Leiden, and this week our vagabond is Elaine Davidson, a great singer-songwriter from the north of England. She shares 2 of her songs with us. On the scene this week, we have part 2 of our chat with Graham Steele, and join the house band looking into one of our Transatlantic Connection songs. This is the Transatlantic Connection Show. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Leiden. Thank you for joining us. It's amazing how quickly 2 weeks passes. No sooner have we released one episode, but the next is scratching at the door, asking to be set free. We are delighted to have as our vagabond this week, Elaine Davidson, singer-songwriter from the north of England, and she shares how she started in music, how she writes songs, and what influences her songwriting. And we'll get 2 live song performances from Elaine, a song called California, and then a second one, Can't Wait to See You Tonight. Continuing their chat from last episode, Steve Bonham, the vagabond philosopher, is in conversation with Graham Steele, a music promoter and music fan, talking about the cultural differences of what folk music means and what the future holds for the music scene. From the house band this episode, we join Steve Bonham delving into The Long Road's latest single, On a Bridge Across the River, how it came into existence, and a little insight into the machinations in the recording studio. Remember, if you like what you see here and you'd like to support us so we can keep making more of it, please consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/thevagabondway. But first up, we have our Vagabond of the Week in conversation with Steve. Over to Steve and Elaine.
The great thing about this transatlantic connection we're exploring is that you just keep finding these hidden gems. These people I've not come across before, but are really knockout. And today's guest is one of those. Elaine Davidson. She's based up in Cumbria. Wonderful voice. Lovely mix of folk, country, jazz, blues. Her story is almost archetypical, if that's the right word. Busking around Europe, fruit picking, hanging out, getting your act together. Back to England, 2 albums, and then a call. Then a call from somebody who phones you from Los Angeles and says, perhaps you want to come over here.
Tell me, how did you get from Cumbria to Laurel Canyon and start recording there? What's the story there?
I've been travelling when I was younger. Music career starts off doing busking and wanted to join a band, so I came back home, and for the first band I set up, there was a young guy we met a couple of people we met in the music shop in Carlisle. We saw him play guitar, so we invited him into the band. But when we got to play, and he only knew 3 songs really, really well. So then we had this young lad on our hands, and my husband, who had basically sent him to the local Ollie Alcock, who was a brilliant guitar teacher, and he tutored him. And then we started playing the clubs and stuff to make money. Anyway, he was here for a couple of years. He disappears, and we lose complete track of him. And then 2013, somebody said, "Oh, have you seen Warren?" Turns out now he's a record producer. So we connected on Facebook. I was already going to make another album. I've made 2, and I was in the process of making the 3rd. I sent him some of the tracks, and he said he wanted to record them. And he had a studio in LA, so that didn't take too long to say, right? So this is amazing. I don't know how this happens. It's like a fairy tale, isn't it? So at that point in time, I had 2 people in that band. So we booked somewhere Airbnb in the canyon, and we went over, and we made the album Can't Tell the River in a place called Sunset Sound. We were staying right at the top of the mountain. You could see the Hollywood Hills sign in the background. And anyway, so we made an album, and then we went travelling around California. A friend of mine said, well, you can't just go there and come back again. So she turned up after we finished the album, and she hired a white Mustang convertible.
Wow.
And we went travelling all around California in this. It's like proper. It was just.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've not been to California for 30 years, so, there's a spirit about the place, isn't there?
Well, certainly the canyon, where you go down in the morning, there's a place called the Country Store, and they're still playing like hippie songs and stuff. So all these creative types come down in the morning for the coffee. People I got to meet, just sitting there talking to them. Just really Great. The Country Store, if you look it up.
Well, why don't we hear one of the songs then?
This is a song that I wrote so we'd left the canyon, I was with my friend, you know, it was just about California, how much I'd been taken with it, you know, and how much I didn't want to leave.
Let's hear it.
Ready to go, suitcase packed, talking as if I will leave it, talking a good talk, matter of fact, yes, it's only my heart I'm deceiving, it's still California. Find me a heaven, find me a beach, find me a soft moon, life's just a peach. What could be better, hey, better than this, yeah, it's only my heart I'm deceiving, it's still California. Bare feet, bareback riding. She's always smiling. Find me a place, find me a shack. Tell my mama I'm not going back. Maybe I'll see you down at the store. Tell you that I'm not believing it's still California. They are the one.
Yeah, you really got the vibe of the place there. There's a few old ghosts hanging around that song. It was lovely. But tell me about where your songs come from for yourself.
Well, it's going to sound a little bit weird, but I feel like I don't necessarily write them.
I get that.
To just like turn up kind of thing. So there's this feeling of like, oh right, okay, that turned up kind of. But sometimes I've got like times when I've been writing one song after the other kind of thing, and then there's other times where there's long periods where I don't necessarily write anything. I kind of trust that. I don't like to labour it. I feel if I've got to the point where I'm labouring a song, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Songs that just seem to turn up out of nowhere, that to me seem like the best.
My version of that is every guitar's got a number of songs inside it, and it just takes a while to coax them all out.
This guitar's doing pretty good on that front then. Really.
And what shaped you as a writer? What did you listen to when you were younger and you thought, oh yeah, I like this. This is where I want to go?
When I was like 15, 16, I was listening to Ry Cooder, and I was probably tuned into quite a lot of American stuff, you know, John Martin, a lot of those type of stuff. I remember thinking when I listened to Joan Armatraders, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulders of lots of people with what we do. But where should people find your stuff?
I've got a website, elainedavidson.com. It's not .co.uk. That's another Elaine Davidson. So if you see that woman, if you see that woman with all those piercings and tattoos, that's not me.
So what's your next song going to be?
Can't wait to see you tonight.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Elaine, and let's see what you're going to do.
Can't wait to see you tonight, under the open sky, free as you like. Can't wait to be where you are on some hide. Starry sky, midnight, blue diamond night, silver moon, can't say, don't know why. You give me butterflies, winter sun left the sky, suddenly made me cry. Take me and keep me dry, take me to paradise. Can't wait to see you tonight. And where will I find you this night? In these cities of doorways, cities of light, where we walk in disguise, like we're nothing and no one with us in our eyes. And this feeling inside is giving me nowhere to hide. Starry sky, midnight, blue diamond light, silver moon, can't say, don't know why. You give me butterflies, winter sun left the sky, soaring leaf made me cry. Take me and keep me dry, take me to paradise. Can't wait to see you, no, I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you tonight.
So this is part 2 of a chat with Graham Steele that our own Steve Bonham had a few weeks ago. Graham is a music promoter, an agent, publicist, and a music fan, and has worked tremendously hard throughout lockdown here in the UK to carry on putting on live music performances online. Now, towards the end of Steve and Graham's chat, some parts of the audio went a bit wonky, so I've had to trim some bits out as he just couldn't make out what was being said. But I've added some subtitles to the end just to help along a little bit at the end there. But we start with the resolution from last week's nail-biting cliffhanger. Graham and Steve enter into the territory of genre labels and the perils and pitfalls thereof. Graham brings up the topic of Americana.
Americana is one of those that, you know, is a difficult one to pin down, you know. I worked with one of the first acts I worked with was a Australian singer-songwriter called Caddy Cooper, and she described her music as being country blues folk. To me, is how you describe Americana, really. Would you disagree?
And now, the conclusion.
I think I've worked out, I have been through so many versions of this, Graham. I've probably disappeared up my own behind over it. But as soon as you put a label, you get a set of rules, which you really immediately realise you're breaking, you know. So for years, I think I was classed as a folk singer, and then everyone said, you've got the wrong sort of voice for folk music, and that chord doesn't belong in English folk music. And you think, well, and then someone says, well, your song sounded like American, but I think there is a kind of golden thread that makes us all brothers and sisters, and you're part of that too. You get it, which is there's something binds me to jazz musician on the streets of New Orleans. You know, we're moonshiners. We take a few simple ingredients and try and create some spirit.
There's a lady from California called Corinne West. I'm a massive fan of hers, and she first came over, I think it was about 15, 20 years ago, and I would say that she was probably the first Americana act that I came across, because she would do folk and blues and country, you know, it was a real mixture. She came over, as I say, I think it was her first UK tour, was about 20 years ago. And I said to her, where were you playing last night? She said, I did a gig in Cardiff in Wales. And I said, how did it go? And she said, it was fantastic. The audience was singing along, everybody was cheering along, everybody was having a great time. Apart from when I did the encore, which was an old spiritual number, she said, and the whole place went really quiet. and nobody clapped at the end. Nobody sang along. And I said to her, well, what was that song that you sang? She said it was Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, which is, if anybody knows the English national rugby song is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And she was in a club in Wales singing, trying to figure out why people didn't sing along.
As with the show, we've called it Transatlantic Connection.
Mm.
We are people who share a distant past in terms of music idioms and stuff like that, but we still write from our own experience, and we write from the stuff that at hand, But that has to do. I think the rest of it makes it too complicated, really.
I worked with Corinne on her last couple of UK tours. So I'd known her for 15 years, and having known her for as long as I had, she contacted me once and said, how about putting me on in folk clubs? And I said to her, well, I don't think that your music would suit in a folk club. And she said, no, I'm sure it would. I'm a folk singer. And I said, well, no, you're not really. And she said, but what about Joni Mitchell? Would she go into a folk club? And I went, well, I don't think so. Well, what about Bob Dylan? And I went, no, a folk, Bob Dylan today. And she was just gobsmacked, So then she said, Neil Young. I went, definitely not. They wouldn't be, they wouldn't have.
We lack that in the UK. We lack that kind of group or that sense, of storytelling songwriters who are writing about the things around them and things. Has that kind of gone away? Because you're right. I mean, it feels like there's a whole lot of people playing a certain sort of music and a whole bunch of people who like it, but it doesn't seem official. It seems a bit subversive and.
I mean, that was an amazing thing with that conversation with Corinne, was that we were talking a different language. We've been talking a different language for 15 years. What she saw as folk music and what, sort of like is classified as folk music in this country, a different thing. That's the one thing that sticks with me as far as the music I enjoy is storytelling. I think, I love a good story. Come across people that can write a great song. But when you can write a great song and tell a story at the same time, there's something very special about that.
If I was going to say to you, 2021, what would you like the world to look like then?
The great thing that we're being able to do now is start putting on live shows again. And it's great to see that people are turning out, for those. I think, online events are here to stay. And I think it's really important that we keep this going. From my company's point of view, we've got some fantastic new releases coming up. We've got some new projects. We're booking in gigs and festivals for next year. So if people can start working together and connecting with each other on a grassroots level, I think that's vitally important that we do that now and try and sort of like build a new music scene on a grassroots level would be really exciting.
Graham, thank you. You're an inspiration to me, and I know a whole lot of other musicians. You matter. Keep going, mate. Keep going. And thank you very much
indeed. Really appreciate this.
This episode, we're going to hear about the Long Road's current single, On a Bridge Across the River, a song by a group of musicians from England with its feet planted very firmly in America, in Nashville, Tennessee, to be precise. A song steeped in both the present and the past. Here is Steve Bonham to tell us how the song was born and then how it grew in the studio and beyond.
It was the morning after my first gig in Nashville, and I walked down the streets past the Johnny Cash Museum and along Broadway, which was a little bit quiet and subdued without the over-amplified soft rock that passes for country music in that part of town. I had a nice coffee and then headed towards the Nissan Stadium, where there's a pedestrian bridge across the river. As I sat there looking at the river, a preacher started to call out with a microphone and a little amplifier, because it was a football match. And it was Sunday morning, and there were people there he could save, who were walking across the bridge to see the Nashville Titans play the Kansas City Chiefs. He was hollering out these great lines, one after the other. The first and most memorable was, "If you want to appreciate the cure, you've got to know the sin." And I don't know if he meant it, but I thought that, wow, blooming heck, That's an invitation to a good life, if ever I heard one, and I listened to him. And I quite admired the way that he kept calling out to the people who were walking past, who were ignoring him mostly. And I just sat in the sun, and I had this tremendous, almost surreal experience of this very modern bridge, with crowds of families going over to watch the game and crossing the Cumberland River, coming up from the sea, of being watched by the past. Rivers are always the borderlands between one world and the next, the future and the past, the earth, the sky and the water, despair and salvation. Not so many people realise that long before it was a music city, Nashville was a port with all the light and the dark and the mysterious that every port in the world has. The great riverboats came up here with gamblers and drunks and ladies of doubtful virtue, and the whole mess of humanity. Captain Thomas Ryman ran more boats than most, enjoying the great profits of travel and sin, until he saw the light and built the Tabernacle Church, which became the Ryman Auditorium. And Nashville had been a slave place as well. Messrs. Glover and Boyd, Dobbs and Porter and a few others would be pleased to meet your needs for slaves at their businesses down on Cedar Street. And I started to hear in my own head those ghosts of the past coming out of the water, coming out of the river, imagining the riverboats coming up with great smoking stacks as well as their big wheels turning. I just took out my iPhone and I typed in the whole lyric and took it with me and then started to put it together. At first it was quite a slow song, but I got this riffy thing going. Almost from the start, I heard what that song should sound like in my head. And when we went into the studio, we did do a good stab at it. We got Chris to play the Hammond organ. I thought this gave it a richer, spookier, weirder sound. Hammond organ, for those who have never met one, is really, well, it's a terrifying instrument. It's all electrical cables and switches and whirring fans and speakers and boxes and banks of keys. It's like something that's come up from the swamp. Wow, that made a big difference to the song. We finished it and took it home, and it was good. But I was still made restless by it. It didn't match what I had in my head, or the feeling I had in my head that day when I was sitting on the bridge. And despite the rule that we always have, which is don't undo what you've just done, I said to Chris and Kev, can we do a bit more? And that night Kev came back and he'd recorded some hollering. There's no other word for it, hollering. And he nailed it straight away. The mix to me of the Hammond organ and Kev's almost tribal singing is extraordinary. Anyway, the vocals on the song from Chris and Kev, particularly Kev, are amazing. But this free-form, almost pagan hollering going on top of a story about a preacher on a bridge, well, it conjures up the image of onlookers, the spirits of the past, the Native Americans, the slaves, the dispossessed, looking on in wonder at the scene. That was it. It just sums up the deep, dark web of life. Out of the darkness, here it is.
On a Sunday morn, on a bridge across the river, Santa Weed was in the air, we're called on to deliver. A preacher who was calling out to let the good Lord in. You wanna appreciate the cure you got, gotta know the sin. Good news is hard to come by, so let me give it to ya. The football fans just passed by, those songs said hallelujah. The kids they roll on shoulders of the Titans and the lane. The young men they just hollered out to lose would be a shame. bells and the drummers played a roll. And the dark-haired girl in leather band sang a final song. Set us free. Hey, my Lord, set us free. Who wants to try to heaven? Who's heading down to hell? You the chance to repent your crimes and tolling off the bell. Tomorrow's not a promise, the good Lord does insist. You refuse to change your ways, you're on Satan's list. Girls who knew a thing or two sang that ain't how it's gonna be. Hey, Lord, set us free. Hey, my Lord, set us free. Hey, Lord, you set us free.
That's it for this episode of the Transatlantic Connection Show. Thank you for watching wherever in the world you are. Remember, please subscribe to the channel, like this video if you liked it, and share it with a pal who you think might like it too. The next episode will be out on Tuesday the 13th of October 2020. If you enjoyed this show, you might enjoy our podcast too. It's called The Vagabond Way Podcast. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. Just search for The Vagabond Way Podcast and you will find us. Don't forget, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for your ongoing support. Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anyone out there, you, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of the things that we make. So, become a vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon, to help us create music, live performances, books and short stories, this YouTube show, our weekly podcast, and some new things we're cooking up. As a vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something that's different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. So, until next time, keep making those transatlantic connections. Bye for now.